getting Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth on AFR Talk.
Welcome back. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth proudly on. Say it with me now. AFR Talk. Our guest, Arnold Ahlert. He was an op-ed columnist with the New York Post for 8 years, currently writing for the Jewish World Review.com and FrontPageMag.com. And you can check him out also at the Patriot Post, the voice of essential liberty. Arnold, welcome back. How are you?
All right, Crane, how are you?
I'm doing well. I just can't wait for your article on today's hearing because it will help me bring everything in, because I'm trying to bring it all in, but I need your genius to do just that. Tell me something.
How did you know I was writing on the hearings?
Well, I played 4 clips of 4 lies in the first segment, and 3 of them were from the hearings today. So I figured that there's enough ground there where you can really make some great points and bring it to a place where we can not only understand the deception, but also where this maybe leads to. I'm hoping that that's where you may go with it. But that's just a thought out there.
Well, it's actually you're not that you're not that far off. That's pretty much what I've been doing. In fact, right up from the beginning of watching the hearings this morning at when they started at 9 o'clock, I am still in the midst of working on this, even as we speak, trying to put the finishing touches on it. I think that Sebelius, quite frankly, I don't think there was any real smoking gun there that Americans weren't already aware of before going into the hearing. I think it sort of played itself out along partisan lines. I mean, the Democrats were perfectly willing to wrap her in a cocoon and tell everybody how wonderful the health care bill is, even as the reality is we now know, courtesy of the CBS investigation, that at least 2 million people who were promised they could keep their health care if they wanted it are losing it, which Sebelius rationalized by saying, well, we had this little change that we made in the health care regulation. By the way, were made 3 months after the bill was implemented. A lot of people don't know that. The bill was implemented in March, and the changes that Sebelius was referring to were made in June. And the part that cracked me up more than anything was the reality that she essentially said that she thought the American people were aware of these technical changes. And she even said that they represented a wide corridor allowing Americans to keep their existing policies. And that's how she sort of got to the point where she said the president was being truthful. Now, the Washington Post, which is not exactly a conservative newspaper, revealed the absurdity of that contention, noting that the technical changes Sebelius cites are contained in, are you ready for this, volume 75 of the Federal Register dated June 17th, 2010, and that the regulations themselves are listed on pages 34,560 through 34,562. So, I agree with her. It's amazing that, if you stopped reading somewhere around page 34,559, you missed all this stuff.
Well, they did have to pass it to find out what's in it and to change it, apparently.
And those are the regulations. People don't realize the bill itself was 2,000 pages, I believe. I don't know what the final total was, somewhere between 2,000 and 2,700, depending on which source you look at. The regulations to enforce the bill are 11,000 pages. It's absolutely insane. I don't know anybody who could absorb that much information if they even wanted to.
And this is the classic way to grab power, isn't it? Just make things as complex as possible. Take the overreach, grab as much as you can, and then when you are getting pared back, if you are challenged in court or otherwise, you will still get everything else you took.
Well, I have always contended that the easiest way to achieve and maintain power is not only to make the law unknown, but to make it unknowable. I don't know how many regulations we've passed just since this president was elected, but I know it's in the tens of thousands. So it becomes easier to make criminals out of people if that's what they desire to do. And I think there's no accident that we are the most litigious society on the face of the planet.
When you were watching this, my question has to do with your emotion. You're laughing at it, and I know I'm outraged, and I'm still outraged. I know that you're outraged, but have you reached a point of, hey, the ship has sailed, and look at this, it's a debacle, and you've gotten to the point where you can kind of smile at the absurdity of it all? Except
for one thing. I don't know whether you would file this under conspiracy theories or not, but what Americans have to ask themselves, see, here's what's going on under the radar. I mean, again, this is the great thing about the Obama administration. Look at my right hand, don't watch what my left hand is doing. But one of the things that CBS News, at least to their credit this time, they did an investigation, and they discovered that while people are having a lot of trouble getting on the site to buy insurance, the Medicaid enrollment is exploding. I mean, exploding. The numbers in Washington, and the numbers are stark. In Washington, D.C., Washington State, 80% of the nation's, 87% of the more than 35,000 people newly enrolled in Medicaid. In Kentucky, it was 82%. In New York, it was 64%. And they found out that similar patterns are repeating themselves in other states. And, of course, CBS, God bless them, they had to include a quote that was, quote, Medicaid experts say they're not sure why they're seeing the lopsided enrollment numbers, but point out that it's easier to enroll in Medicaid than private insurance. And they're apparently oblivious to that, what that really means. And so then you have to ask yourself, and I'm telling Americans in tomorrow's column, I'm giving you kind of heads up here.
Hey, thanks.
Is the chaos surrounding this health care bill, coupled with the explosion of Medicaid enrollees enabled by the same bill, happening by accident, or is it happening by design? Obama is on the record more than once saying he is committed to a single-payer, government-run health care system. Well, Medicaid is a single-payer, government-run health care program, and if you're going to enroll more people in Medicaid than you're going to be able to enroll in private insurance, you're certainly going to create the death spiral that would eventually be the end of private insurance companies. There are people who say that this is happening way too fast for the American public to get on board. But I make the point, people without insurance are, you can get fairly desperate. You're a guy with 2 kids and a wife, and suddenly you have no more health insurance, and the government comes along and says, well, we know it's not the best thing that could happen, but if you allow us to put the whole country on single-payer government-run health care, we can get you on a policy right away.
And all the while, pardon me, to interject here just for a moment, a couple things to highlight in this strategy. I see this as absolutely plausible, especially in light of a plane ride that Dennis Kucinich took where he changed his mind on that plane ride. Maybe he was explained what Barney Frank had said and so many others, and there's a 4.5-minute video montage of President Obama and others talking about the strategy to get to a single payer. But the other point is this allows time for them to blame and demonize the insurance companies more and more, doesn't it?
I said that, too. I said, one thing I said that people should realize, if there's one thing the massive expansion of the welfare state has proven, it is the reality that a record number of Americans are willing to be subsidized by their fellow Americans. And, demonizing private insurance companies that many Americans already hold in contempt to the point where they would be driven into bankruptcy is certainly not unimaginable. And even there, that's assuming that the quality of current enrollees isn't already producing the aforementioned death spiral. So, yeah, I think it's you have to decide whether what we're really dealing with here is an administration that is fantastically inept or pretty Machiavellian. And I wouldn't want to bet the farm on inept.
Yeah, I think we have to Well, it strains belief, credulity that you would think the president doesn't know about so many things, and then we learn later that people very close to the president knew about them. And I could talk about Fast and Furious, IRS, NSA. We can go right down the line. And my question is, as we've seen this, and people always say, well, this is how politics works. This is how it's always worked. Tell me something, Arnold. Is this just business as usual, and maybe we're more attuned to it because of the fact that we are seeing now 5, 6 years of very hard left policies?
Well, I mean, I guess the American people can get used to anything. Certainly the left's strong suit is they use incrementalism as well as anybody has ever used incrementalism. They've certainly, as Patrick Moynihan once said, they've been able to define deviancy down to the point where a lot of people don't think it's problematic that if you're under 30 right now, the out-of-wedlock birth rate is now over 50%. You know, they call that, well, family alternative lifestyles or whatever they call it, even as they remain oblivious to the fact that the surest indicator of poverty is single-parent household raised by a head female heading the household. I mean, there's just no other indicator out there that's a more sure bet of kids heading into poverty than that one, and yet somehow it's become socially acceptable.
What about another part of this is the silencing of those who dare to speak out against it? And we've seen many examples in different areas, with different areas in news. We see it with Fox News. We now have a report coming from CNN, and last night, Anderson Cooper speaking to a reporter and saying, hey, they're silencing insurance companies. But that's not new, and I think I've read that from you a little in one of your articles back.
Well, I mean, what would happen, you know, it's remarkable to me, what would happen if an insurance company said, I don't care what the government says, I'm going to print the number of policies, or I'm going to make it public, the number of people who have signed up for the health care bill. I wonder if they could actually be prosecuted, because Sebelius today was offered, you know, okay, you won't give us the numbers. What if the insurance companies want to give us the numbers? Will you lift the gag order? Absolutely not. I'm betting half the people in America didn't know there was a gag order on the insurance companies.
And once again, we see what I would think this is an amazing place for the Fourth Estate to be, because they could expose this, and it would be award-winning journalism, and it's not that difficult, especially in light of they've got you doing all the hard and heavy lifting, breaking it down for us and bringing us the numbers that we can click on and say, wait a second, all right, here are the facts, and beyond the subterfuge of how they're presented. And it seems that they're waking up. Why don't we see more outrage from the mainstream media regarding this, as well as Benghazi? Why did it take a year for CBS to do its job rather than cover it up? Okay,
well, you know, I'm of the opinion that CBS's quote unquote, expose was about as calculated as it gets, and I'll tell you why. Their own reporter, Cheryl Atkinson, who is one of the genuine investigative reporters out there, had every bit of information that they presented on Sunday night, with maybe the exception of the one British guy who came forward, okay? They held that information until after the 2012 election, and when are they releasing it? Almost at the midpoint between the 2012 election and the 2014 midterm election. Now, this is the classic extrapolation of the Friday afternoon news dump, okay? They know this information is detrimental to Democrats, and they especially know it's detrimental to Hillary Clinton. If they can get it all out of the way long before the 2014 election, they can turn around and say, see, we broadcast this, we're a legitimate news network. Well, like I said, they had all the information, and if they had printed the same information or published the same information, it might have turned the 2012 election, but they weren't going to have that. They were going to make sure that when they put it out, it didn't matter anymore.
I want to hit one more story before we end up for the break, and I appreciate you being with us, Arnold Ahlert. I can only imagine how demand in your time is with the article and deadline coming up, and look forward to it, and I will direct my audience to it. Tell me, military purge. We've seen this. The Investors Business Daily ran a piece, I believe today or yesterday, that was remarkably much like yours. First question, was that your work? Second question: what are we seeing here?
I can't beat up anybody. I'm a collator. I'm a collector of facts. So if somebody else is using my column to collect facts, that's fine with me. That's how it's done. Nobody can know everything about everything, and the hard work is going and digging out the information, and you hope it's reliable. Gotcha. Because that's what I try and do. I try and find the most reliable
others, sir. You do credit others. I mean, with respect. I understand, and hey, talk radio's full of that, and hopefully we can all do our job to credit others. But first, you're a class act, by the way. Obama's military purge, 2 minutes, go.
There's been a lot of people purged from the military ranks. There are a lot of theories out there that, I happen to think that personally, and I kept some of my personal theories out of this piece, that the military represents the last bastion of organized conservative resistance. And if you notice what the focus of the military lately has been, it hasn't been, making it the baddest fighting force on the planet as much as it's been making it like everything else in America, where we've gone from don't ask, don't tell to gays serving openly in the military. We've gone to now women in combat. We've made diversity a thing to the point where we couldn't even pull Nadal Hassan off his post, even though
Benghazi, final question, moments remaining. Benghazi, was that one of the things that linked many of these dismissals and firings?
Not that I was aware of. There's a lot of different reasons these people were fired, and so that's why it's hard to come up with one single theory. I can tell you one thing, though. I don't think there's...
Hello, I'm Tim